Welcome back to the AAA MF YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed the last video that we shot at Bruntingthorpe of the 458 Speciale against my 4 litre. Now, there were some comments that it wasn't fair to put a twin turbo McLaren up against the Ferrari. So today, I've brought along a twin turbo Ferrari to put up against my McLaren. Now, also, I've been accused of not being a very good driver, which I'm not going to deny. So today I've brought along a proper racing instructor to test both cars and see what he thinks as well. So he's a little bit taller than me. So I'll put the seat all the way back.
Hi guys, I'm Elliot Cole. So Mark may have mentioned that I'm a motorsport coach, but what he probably failed to tell you is I'm also a high-speed stunt driver, and I'm quite looking forward to having a bit of fun in his car today. So on paper, the 488 and the 650S are pretty much benchmarks for the same area of the supercar market. You've got the 4 litre turbo in the 488, the 3 litre twin turbo in the McLaren. Handling wise, I've spent a lot more time in the McLaren on circuit, not quite so much in the 488, and with the active wishbones, the active aero on this and the air brake, high speed corners the McLaren takes in its stride. The 488 for me personally feels a little bit less compliant. But again, that might just be through kind of lack of experience with that particular car and being a little bit more comfortable in the 650. So both cars are designed with the racetrack in mind. They're incredible round Grand Prix circuits, but inevitably with cars with over 600 horsepower, they can go a little bit tail happy. So at the moment I'm driving Mark's 650S. He's currently in the 488 ahead of us. So what do you think of it, Mark?
Thanks, Elliot. So this is my first time in the Ferrari 488 GTB. It feels very different to the McLaren. So first of all, the steering wheel is actually thicker, and my one's made out of Alcantara, which I actually prefer. On this one, you've got the indicators on the steering wheel, which I obviously haven't had before, but I guess you get used to that quite quickly. It feels very different to the McLaren. The McLaren obviously has the carbon fiber tub, so it feels a bit more rigid, and it actually feels a bit more planted on the ground when you're driving. The Ferrari tends to bob a little bit up and down at the front, feels quite light at the front, whereas the McLaren feels a little bit more planted to the ground. But let's take it for another drive and see how it feels. I like the start-stop button. I'll try and scare Tim. Are you okay, Tim?
I'm alright. I'm okay today. Not hungover.
Here we go. Let's put it in race mode. Thought it was a little bit quiet. So you've got the steering wheel, has the lights on the top to tell you when to change up, which is quite nice. It's a very different sound to the McLaren. The McLaren, you can hear the turbos spooling up, and this one sounds more like a naturally aspirated car. What do you think, Tim? Which one do you prefer the sound of? You've been in both now.
This one you can hear the sound more in the car, but out of the car I prefer the McLaren.
Right. The Ferrari looks good though, right?
Stunning.
Stunning car. Okay, so we've been driving now for about 20 minutes, and Tim, we love the car, right?
Yeah, it's
But we love any Ferrari, right?
true.
I think what makes this really special, it's not the engine per se, it's just the fact that it's a Ferrari. You know, when you're in a Ferrari, any Ferrari, it feels special, but especially this car, because it looks so damn good, and it sounds so good, and it's hard not to fall in love with these cars. It does feel very different from the McLaren though, despite the fact that they're both mid-engine, twin-turbo cars with very similar power outputs. They do feel very different to drive, which is quite surprising. The McLaren feels a little bit more technical. This feels a little bit more like the 458 Speciale we drove at Bruntingthorpe. You can't really tell that it's a turbo, I have to say. Whereas with the McLaren, you feel a lot more turbo lag. This definitely has less turbo lag. And it doesn't, I think if you got into, I'm not sure you would know it was a turbo. What do you think, Tim?
No, the power is just straight on, isn't it?
It's very seamless power delivery. So very different from the McLaren power delivery, which the turbos spool up and then you kind of take off. So it makes it very different in driving experience. I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's interesting, I put on my Instagram story a photo of the two of these and asked people to choose, and 70% went with the Ferrari, so no surprise there. But I wonder how many people that have driven the Ferrari and driven the McLaren back to back would choose the Ferrari. But it's a very nice car. It's very nice. I'm very excited to see what they do with the next generation, the 488 Speciale or 488 GTO, whichever one it's going to be called. Because I think that where they can improve is the downforce at the front of this car, and on the looks. I like the look of this car, but I think the front could be more aggressive, and I think they've done that deliberately because they knew they were bringing out the 488, the 458 Speciale replacement, and they needed something to do with the front and make it more aggressive. So I think they've done that deliberately. I think the back of this car looks phenomenal. It just looks perfect, and you know, we've been filming all morning, and the Ferrari actually sounds fantastic.
Now it's my turn to get my hands on the 488, and instantly, as much as they are very similar cars on paper, the 488 top trumps the McLaren slightly with horsepower, torque output, 0 to 62 times. The emotional connection that the 488 gives you is huge. From the sound, the McLaren's great, but the Ferrari's just got that kind of really tinny, familiar Ferrari exhaust note to it. The power curve is completely different to the McLaren. You don't get a huge amount of turbo lag. It's got a bit more of a consistent feel to it, and the road hold is night and day. This is ticking a few more boxes for me.
So let's start with the obvious question to Elliot: Ferrari or McLaren?
This is a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. I've been very fortunate. I spent a large amount of time in the 650S, and on paper they are very similar cars. But I think supercar ownership, a large part of it comes down to emotion, and the Ferrari ticks maybe one or two more boxes for me.
We're on a hill here, we're on a gradient, so I need to stand here to make myself look taller. Okay, so for me though, the McLaren feels turbocharged when the Ferrari doesn't.
Yeah,
would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think it feels more like a naturally aspirated engine in the 488, which is probably slightly less engaging for people that have got a lot of experience with cars with
this
this
doesn't
amount
feel
of power.
too dissimilar to the 458 Speciale that I drove 2 weeks ago at Bruntingthorpe.
No, absolutely. It's got a much more consistent power curve. You get that real sort of shovel around the back of the head feeling in the McLaren.
Now, does this feel more planted at the front than the 488, or is that just me? Because I'm used to driving this car.
I think personally it does, with the double wishbone suspension, the active aero that it's got through the high speed stuff. I've spent a lot of time on tracks in the McLaren, and it changes direction like no other car.
Okay, so Ferrari or McLaren if you were to have the keys, or I was to give you the keys to one now to take home?
Heart says Ferrari, head and driving in terms of performance, McLaren.
So maybe the 488 Speciale will be even more engaging and probably have a little bit more downforce at the front.
Yeah.
Because they'll probably put a different spoiler on the front. right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
it'll
yeah.
have more aero.
Yeah, be a little bit more compliant.
Yeah. So you're going with a Ferrari?
Yeah.
Head or heart? Head or heart?
Heart's got to be heart.
Heart.
I'm really hoping this isn't the last video I'm in because I've not chosen this, I've chosen that. But
Tim, head or heart?
Heart, Ferrari.
Everyone's going for the Ferrari. So let us know in the comments which one you prefer. Thank you for watching, as always. And
thank you for watching, guys. I've been Elliot Cole. Make sure you give the video a big thumbs up and subscribe to 888MF on YouTube.